You've stepped into a quiet place tonight, a place that doesn't see many visitors after dark, the kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for you to breathe first. Tonight's theme is Graveyard Night Watch Horror, the lonely hours between midnight and dawn, where only the living think they're alone. These are the real accounts from those who worked the shift no one wanted. The guards, the caretakers, the watchers, who learned that the dead don't always stay quiet. But these stories are different. They don't scream, they whisper. And once you hear them, you'll start to notice what's moving in the corners of your own dark room. Most people listen to these stories, then try to forget them. They scroll, they click away, but they never hit subscribe. Maybe it's safer that way. Before we begin, tell me something. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? Let me know down in the comments. I'll be reading from the dark now. Let's begin. The bell shouldn't have been ringing. It was close to midnight and I was alone, or at least I was supposed to be. I was sitting in the little shack beside the gate trying to stay awake, scrolling on my phone with the volume low. The wind had died down an hour ago. Everything was still, the kind of heavy silence that makes your ears ring. Then the sound hit. Gong. The bell in the old stone tower at the top of the hill rang once, deep, metallic, echoing through the whole graveyard. I froze. The bell only rang during funerals now. We didn't use it otherwise, and the rope had been cut years ago after some kids climbed up and tried to swing from it. There was no way anyone could ring it by hand without a ladder or a key to the tower door, which only I had tonight. Still, it rang again. Gongo. A long pause. Then 2 fast rings and almost playful. I remember the way the air felt in that moment, cold but thick, like standing in a sealed room after someone exhales right next to your ear. My hands were sweating even though I could see my breath. I grabbed my flashlight, trying to convince myself it was a raccoon or a bird somehow bumping into the clapper, but deep down I already knew something wasn't right. The graveyard I work at isn't big, but it's old. A lot of the stones have sunk sideways into the earth, and there's moss growing over most of the names. The bell tower stands on a little hill near the back, a squat square building with narrow windows and a staircase that twists up to the bell chamber. The walls are damp with green streaks where rain leaks in. I started the slow walk up the hill, gravel crunching, my flashlight beam cutting through the fog. I kept telling myself not to look between the graves because I knew if I saw anything, even just a shadow, I'd bolt. The bell tower came into view, its outline crooked against the moonlight. The heavy wooden door at the bottom was closed, like always. The padlock was still hanging there, snapped shut. Gong. This time it came from right above me. I tilted the flashlight upward, and for a second I thought I saw someone moving inside, a dark shape crossing the narrow window slit near the top. Hello? I called, my voice sounding smaller than I wanted it to. Who's up there? Nothing, just the echo of my voice bouncing between the stones. Then the bell swayed once, slow and deliberate, and rang again. I'm not proud of what I did next. I panicked. I ran back down the hill to the shack and locked myself inside. My hands were shaking too much to hold the flashlight steady. I sat there listening for footsteps or laughter, anything human, but there was just silence, until the phone rang. It was the old landline we keep for emergencies. Hardly anyone uses it anymore. I picked it up expecting my supervisor, but the line was just static, faint crackling like wind blowing over a mic. Who is this? I said. Then I heard it, the faintest sound behind the static. A bell, slow, rhythmic, and getting louder. I hung up so hard the receiver cracked against the base. For the next half hour I tried to rationalize everything. Maybe someone had broken in before my shift and was messing with me. Maybe the lock wasn't as secure as it looked. I even texted my coworker, Marty, who usually took the day shifts. Me. Hey, did you go up to the tower earlier? Door was locked, but I heard the bell. Marty, nah man. Haven't been up there in months. That thing still stands? Lol, he didn't answer after that. The longer I sat there, the more I felt the walls closing in. The shack's single window faced the hill, and every so often I'd glance up and see a faint shape moving near the tower, like something swaying in the wind. Then, around 12:30, the power went out. The heater died. The fluorescent light above my head blinked off, and I was left in complete darkness except for the dim beam of my flashlight. The graveyard went dead silent, and then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps outside the shack. Crunching over gravel, coming closer. I turned off my flashlight instantly. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I crouched under the desk, trying not to breathe. The steps stopped right outside the door. I could hear someone breathing, soft, shaky, like they were trying not to be noticed either. Then the faint click of the doorknob turning, locked, another click, then a slow scrape down the door, like someone dragging metal keys across the wood. That's when I remembered. The only key to the bell tower was on my belt. I waited until the sound faded before I dared to move. I checked the time on my phone, 12:46 a.m. The battery was down to 9%. No signal. I couldn't stay in the shack. If someone was outside, I was trapped. So like an idiot, I decided to make a run for the tower. The fog was thick now, low to the ground, making everything look like it was floating. I ran up the path, the crunch of gravel muffled under my boots. My flashlight flickered but didn't die. The tower door loomed ahead. The lock was still there, but the latch was hanging open. Someone had already gone inside. The first step creaked like it was screaming. The air inside smelled old. Mold, iron, something sweet but sour underneath. I shined the light up the spiral staircase, half expecting to see someone standing halfway up. Nothing. Just the narrow steps curving into darkness. I climbed. Each step echoed. I could feel the vibration through my shoes. The higher I went, the colder it got. My breath fogged up the lens of my flashlight. Halfway up, I noticed the sound, not ringing, not footsteps. Just this low hum, like metal vibrating in the walls. It grew louder the higher I went until it blended into the bell's hollow resonance. At the top, the stairs opened into a small chamber. The bell hung from its beam, massive and dark, the rope dangling loosely beside it. Moonlight cut through the window slit, casting a silver line across the floor. And that's when I saw the rope move. It wasn't swinging from the wind. It was being pulled, slowly, steadily, down, then released. Down, then released. Each pull making the bell groan like it was breathing. I followed the rope with my light. It trailed down to the floor, and into the shadows behind the bell. "Hey," I said, my voice cracking. The rope went still. Then, from behind the bell, a hand slid into view. Pale, thin, fingers curled tight around the rope. I didn't think. I just ran. Down the stairs, skipping steps, my shoulder slamming into the wall as I turned. I could hear the bell ringing behind me. Faster now, out of rhythm, wild, gong, gong, gong. Halfway down, the sound changed. It wasn't metal anymore. It was a voice. Deep and echoing, but words this time, "Don't leave me." I hit the bottom step and burst through the door. The cold air outside hit me like a slap. I didn't stop until I reached the gatehouse. I locked myself inside, pressed my back against the wall, and waited. The ringing stopped after a few minutes. I sat there until sunrise, too scared to even blink. When Marty came to relieve me in the morning, I must have looked like hell. He joked at first, but when I told him what happened, his face changed. "You went inside the tower?" he asked. "Yeah, why?" He hesitated. "You ever hear about the caretaker who worked here before you?" I shook my head. He looked out toward the hill. Guy hung himself in there. Rope still tied to the bell. Happened during a storm maybe 10 years ago. They cut him down, but I guess they never got all of it. I didn't say anything. I quit that week. Told them I couldn't handle the hours anymore. But every night since, around midnight, my phone buzzes once. No caller ID. And if I put it to my ear, I swear I can hear that same deep toll of the bell, echoing from far away. It always rings 13 times, and every time, after the last one, there's a whisper, faint, almost swallowed by the static. "You left me." The sound of metal scraping against stone woke me before my shift even started. It came from somewhere deep in the graveyard, faint but steady. Skr, clink, skr, clink, like someone dragging a shovel across rock. I was sitting in my car finishing my coffee before clocking in. It was 11:47 p.m. I remember the time because the second hand on the dashboard clock froze for a second, then jumped forward like even it didn't want to count the minutes I was about to live through. I killed the engine. The noise stopped too. For a second, the silence was total. No wind, no crickets, nothing. Just the faint hum in my ears and the feeling that something in the dark was listening back. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a raccoon. Maybe wind pushing a loose tool against the shed. But I couldn't shake the weight in my chest. The kind that tells you you're not supposed to be here. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The air hit me, cold and damp like it had been held underwater. Grave 47 sits at the far end of the cemetery, near the slope where the ground dips toward the trees. We don't bury anyone there anymore and the soil's too soft, always shifting after rain. The last grave dug in that row was back in '98, a young man named Andrew Keller. The headstones cracked down the middle, split clean like lightning hit it. As I walked down the path, I kept telling myself I'd just check the tool shed, make sure nothing fell. But my flashlight beam kept pulling toward the old section, toward that line of crooked stones leaning like bad teeth, and then I saw it. A shovel. It was standing upright beside grave 47, half buried in the dirt like someone had just stopped mid-dig. The metal glinted wet in the flashlight, but the handle was clean, untouched. There were no footprints, no wheelbarrow tracks, nothing, just that shovel, and the dirt beside it. Moving. I thought it was my eyes playing tricks. The loose soil over the grave shifted in tiny pulses like it was breathing. I crouched down, shined the light closer. It wasn't wind. Each rise and fall had rhythm. Slow, deliberate, like something deep beneath was pushing up against the earth. My mouth went dry. I whispered, I don't even know why. Hello? The ground stopped moving. And then, from somewhere under the dirt, came a soft tap, tap, tap. I stumbled backward so hard I tripped over a flat headstone and landed on my elbow. The flashlight rolled out of my hand, the beam spinning across the graves until it caught something pale. A corner of cloth sticking out from the soil, right next to the shovel. It looked like the edge of a sleeve. I should have called my supervisor. I should have gone back to the shack, locked the door, and waited till sunrise. But curiosity's a poison. It makes you move when you should freeze. I picked up the flashlight, took a step closer. The sleeve was old, yellowed fabric, maybe part of a burial garment. I reached out, hesitated, then brushed away a bit of dirt. That's when I saw the fingernail, gray, curved with dirt caked beneath it. The hand twitched. I screamed, dropped the light and ran, but I only made it halfway to the main path before I stopped. The sound behind me and the scraping had started again. Not from below this time, from above. The shovel was moving. It dragged itself across the ground, metal against stone, leaving a crooked line in the dirt as it turned toward me. I don't know how long I stood there staring. The handle of the shovel tilted, then jerked upward like someone had grabbed it. But there was no one there, just the fog and the leaning graves. I ran back to the shack and slammed the door. Inside, my heart wouldn't slow down. I kept replaying what I'd seen, that twitch, the hand, the sound. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. Maybe it was an animal. Maybe gas pockets underground shifting the soil. Something scientific. But then the smell hit. It crept in through the cracks in the shack walls. Damp, sour, like mud mixed with rot. The same smell that had hung over grave 47. I looked out the window. The fog had thickened, curling around the stones like smoke. And right there in the middle of it stood the shovel again, upright, perfectly still, its shadow stretching toward the shack. I swear it hadn't been there when I ran. That's when my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You left it open. I stared at the screen. Me. Who is this? Unknown. The ground. Then the phone died. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't leave the shack either. Every hour or so I'd hear faint scraping from the direction of grave 47. Sometimes a low thud, like someone knocking on wood far underground. By dawn, the shovel was gone. All that remained was a patch of fresh dirt that hadn't been there before, and just above it, sticking out like a tongue, was a small piece of paper soaked from dew. I almost didn't pick it up, but something made me. It was an old cemetery record printed from the '90s. The name Andrew Keller was circled in red ink. Next to it, someone had scribbled, "Not empty." Part 2I spent the next day trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. No one believed me anyway. When I told my supervisor, he just frowned and said, "Probably a prank. Teenagers sneak in sometimes." He even laughed a little, like I'd fallen for something obvious, but I'd been the one closing the gate that night. The lock wasn't tampered with. The cameras near the entrance were off again, like always. Still, he made me go check the area with him. Middle of the afternoon, sun high, birds chirping. Everything looked normal. The grave was flat again, no sign of digging. The shovel was gone, except the grass right beside grave 47 had been flattened, like someone or something had been kneeling there for a while. My supervisor shrugged it off. Ground's soft. Rain does that. He didn't smell what I smelled. The air still had that sweet rot scent clinging to it. It wasn't just dirt, it was something older, like wet wood and rusted iron. He left after 10 minutes, but I stayed behind. I told him I needed to tidy up some tools. Truth was, I just needed to be sure. I stood there for almost half an hour, watching that patch of grass. Nothing moved. No wind, no sound. Just a low hum in my ears, then my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Why'd you stop digging? That message broke something in me. Not fear, something deeper. It's that moment when you know something's targeting you specifically. Like you've already been chosen for something you don't understand. I deleted the message. Blocked the number. Didn't help. Every night after that, the texts kept coming. From different numbers, but always the same tone. You left it open. It's waiting. Go back. I stopped replying. But I didn't stop thinking about it. I started dreaming about the shovel. The sound of metal scraping the stones. The way the dirt over grave 47 moved like breath. And always that faint knocking from below. In one dream, I was the one holding the shovel. I could feel the handle vibrating in my hands like something beneath the dirt was pulling it from the other side. When I woke up, my palms were raw, actual blisters forming. That's when I decided I had to see it again. 2 nights later, I went back. I told myself it was just to clear my head, but the truth? I couldn't stop thinking about what might be under that grave. Not empty. Those words looped in my mind until they stopped feeling like handwriting and started feeling like a warning. The fog was heavier that night. It clung to my jacket, soaked through to my skin. My flashlight beam barely reached 10 feet ahead. The grave looked untouched, like no one had ever been buried there. No shovel, no disturbed soil. Just smooth, damp earth and the cracked headstone leaning forward. But when I knelt down and brushed some dirt away from the base of the stone, I found something buried shallow. A photograph, old black and white, edges curled. A man standing beside an open grave holding a shovel, his face half blurred by light, and in the corner, written in fading ink, Grave 47, 1998. My throat closed. I flipped the photo over. On the back, more handwriting. He's still moving. That's when the ground beside me shifted again, slow. Like something waking up. I dropped the photo, stumbled backward. The soil cracked open slightly. Just enough for a breath of cold air to seep out. It smelled like old rain and rot, and then from that tiny gap came a whisper. Faint. Male. Hoarse. Help me. I froze. Please. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even desperate. It sounded tired, weak, like someone who had been calling for so long they'd forgotten what silence was. Who are you? I whispered back before I could stop myself. The ground shifted again. Andrew. The name hit me like a punch. Andrew Keller. The one buried here. I should have run. Instead, I looked around, grabbed a loose shovel from a nearby cart, probably the same one from before, and started digging. Each scoop of dirt came up heavier than the last. The earth felt wrong, dense, sticky, almost warm. My arms started shaking. Sweat mixed with the damp air. My breath came out in clouds that didn't fade fast enough. After a few minutes, I hit something solid. Wood. I wiped the dirt away and found the edge of a coffin lid. It was cracked. Splintered open on one side, and inside something moved, not a body. Not exactly, it looked like mud, thick, dark, shifting on its own. A shape half-formed. The suggestion of a face pressing up through it for a split second before melting back down. Then, a hand shot out, gray and slick with soil. Fingers curling around the edge of the coffin. I stumbled back, fell onto the shovel, and the metal clanged against the coffin. The face rose again. Eyes pale, mouth open. But the mouth didn't move. The sound came from the ground itself, bury me right this time. The first time I heard her crying, I thought it was a fox. You'd be surprised how human they can sound at night. that sharp, broken wail that slices through the quiet. But this wasn't that. It wasn't an animal, and it wasn't far away. It came from just beyond the fence line, near the old stone mausoleum where we keep the oldest family tombs. It was my second week working as a night guard. I'd gotten used to the silence, to the sound of my own footsteps echoing between headstones. But that night, that crying hit different. It was soft at first, like someone trying not to be heard. Then it grew. Full sobs, wet and ragged, echoing off the stone walls. And it didn't stop. I remember standing by the gate, frozen, flashlight in hand, every instinct screaming stay put. But then I saw the light flicker by the mausoleum, a faint warm glow like a candle burning behind the iron gate. We didn't allow candles. Fire hazard. So I forced myself forward. The path to the mausoleum cuts through the oldest part of the graveyard, where the stones are small and half sunk into the ground. The air always feels colder there, the kind of cold that seeps through your jacket and sits on your skin. The crying grew louder as I got closer. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was pain, deep guttural pain, like someone had lost everything and couldn't stop replaying it. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. "You okay in there?" No answer. Just crying. I reached the mausoleum steps and shined my flashlight through the bars. The candlelight flickered against the back wall. And right in front of it, crouched low, was a woman. She was wearing a white dress, old-fashioned, long sleeves, torn hem trailing across the dusty floor. Her hair was dark, tangled. One bare foot stuck out from under the fabric, toes gray with cold. Her shoulders shook with every sob. "Ma'am," I said, forcing my voice steady. "The cemetery's closed. You can't be in there." Still no answer. I checked the padlock. It was still snapped shut. I rattled the gate just to make a point, but when I did, the crying stopped. Just cut off, mid-breath. And in the sudden silence, I realized something else. The candlelight wasn't flickering anymore. It was steady, too steady, like an electric bulb. I angled my light again. The flame didn't move because there was no flame. It wasn't a candle at all. It was a phone flashlight propped up on the ground, aimed toward the back wall. And the woman was gone. I don't remember breathing for a full 10 seconds. The air in there looked heavy like smoke. I unlocked the gate and pushed it open just enough to peek inside. The smell hit first, and old stone and wet earth. I stepped in slowly. The beam from my flashlight cut through the haze and caught the phone on the ground. An older model. Screen cracked, light still on. The crying started. Again, but not inside. Behind. Me right outside the gate. I spun around so fast the light bounced off the walls. Nothing, just fog drifting between the graves. Then I noticed something new. A wet footprint right next to mine. Bare, small, and fresh. I shut the gate and backed away. I didn't run. Not yet. I called my supervisor, told him someone had broken in and might be hiding near the mausoleum. He said he'd send someone in the morning to check. "Stay near the gate," he said. "Don't go chasing shadows." Easy for him to say. I stayed in the shack until dawn, the radio playing quietly just to fill the silence. But around 3:17 a.m. the signal broke with static, and through it I heard soft sobbing. It was faint, but definitely a woman. Then a voice, low and cracked, whispered through the radio. "Why did you leave me?" I didn't go back to the mausoleum for 3 nights. I told myself I was being stupid, that grief makes people do weird things. Maybe she was some relative who'd lost someone. But then the texts started coming. Numbers I didn't know. Each message the same. "I'm still here." Sometimes at 2 a.m., sometimes right before my shift. And every time I drove past the cemetery gate, I'd see something faint, like a figure in white standing by the mausoleum steps. The next week, a groundskeeper found the phone I'd seen that night still lying inside the mausoleum. He said it belonged to a woman named Rachel Keller. No relation to the other grave, though the name chilled me anyway. She'd gone missing 2 years ago. Her fiancé had been buried in the same mausoleum. Car crash. They'd found her wedding dress laid over his coffin after the funeral. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her crying. The footprints. That voice through the radio. And every night when I passed that spot I'd hear it again, faint but clear. At first, it was the same sobbing. Then it started forming words. "Come back." Please, it's cold. You promised. It got to the point where I started bringing flowers. Not because I believed, but because ignoring it felt worse. I'd leave them by the gate. The next night, they'd be gone. One night, I made the mistake of stepping inside again. It was raining, and the wind was howling so loud I barely heard it at first, the crying blending with the storm. I just wanted to check if anyone was hiding there again. But when I opened the gate, it swung easily. The lock was gone. The mausoleum was darker this time. My flashlight caught the rows of stone plaques on the walls, each name carved deep. When I got to the center, I saw a new flower arrangement on the floor. White lilies, fresh, still wet from the rain, and there, next to them, sat a photograph in a cracked frame. It was me, standing at the gate, from the night before. I felt my throat close. The picture was wet, but the ink hadn't run, like it had just been printed. And then, from the back of the mausoleum, I heard that same voice whisper, "Now you know how it feels." The flashlight flickered. For a split second, I saw her again, the woman in white kneeling by the far wall, face pressed against a coffin. But this time her hair was dry, her skin pale gray. She turned, her eyes weren't hollow or ghostly, though they were bloodshot, angry. "Why did you leave me?" she hissed. I stumbled backward, dropped the light, hit the wall hard. When I picked it up again, she was gone. Only the sound of dripping water and the faint echo of sobs remained. I don't remember how I made it back to the shack. The rain was still falling hard, lightning flashing every few seconds. When I looked out the window, the mausoleum was barely visible through the fog. But just as I started to calm down, I saw a figure walking along the path. Slow, deliberate, barefoot, white dress dragging through the mud. She stopped halfway down the hill and turned toward the shack. Even from that distance, I could see her mouth moving. No sound came through the glass. But I didn't need to hear it. I knew what she was saying. "You left me. I quit a week later, but sometimes, when I drive past the cemetery at night, I catch it again. That faint, broken sound carried by the wind. Crying. Always from the same place. And the worst part? Last week I drove by during the day. The sun was bright. The grass was dry. But when I looked at the mausoleum steps, I saw the flowers I'd left months ago, perfectly fresh. Not a single petal wilted, and next to them, carved into the stone by the gate, was my name. The keys that wouldn't stop ringing. The first time my keys rang, I thought it was the wind. They hang from my belt every shift. 22 metal keys in total, each for a different gate, door, or storage unit in the cemetery. They jingle when I walk faintly. Nothing unusual. But that night, around 1 a.m., I was sitting in the East Guard shack drinking coffee when they started to ring, not jingle. Ring, sharp, rhythmic, like tiny bells chiming in perfect time, and they weren't moving. I stared down at the ring of keys hanging from my belt. They were completely still. No sway, no vibration. But the sound kept going, metallic and deliberate, echoing softly in the tiny room. I reached down, touched them. The moment my fingers brushed the metal, the ringing stopped. Total silence. I exhaled, half laughing at myself. Maybe it was tinnitus or one of those wind chimes the caretaker put up outside. I got up, opened the shack door. The night was still. No wind. Just fog creeping along the ground and that deep cold that settles after midnight. Then the ringing started again. Behind me, inside the shack. I turned around slow. The keys were swaying slightly now, even though I hadn't moved fast enough to make them. Chime, chime, chime. It wasn't random. There was rhythm to it, a pattern. 3 short, 1 long. 3 short, 1 long Morse code, maybe? My phone was dead, but I remembered the basic alphabet from an old training course. If it was Morse, it spelled something close to sh, then a pause. Another 3 short, 1 long E. And again. L one more time, P. The keys were ringing out the word help. I froze. My throat went dry. "Who's there?" I said to no one, my voice shaking. The keys went dead silent again. Then, faintly, from outside the shack, the sound of another set of keys jingling. Slow. Heavy. Like someone walking down the gravel path, each step punctuated by the soft metallic clink. I turned off my flashlight, crouched near the window, and looked out. Fog, gravestones. Nothing else, but the sound kept getting closer. Step. Chime. Step. Chime. It stopped right outside the shack door. The handle rattled once, gently, like someone testing it. Then the faintest voice. Low and broken. Let me in. I backed away, holding my breath. The doorknob turned halfway before stopping. Then silence. I waited. 30 seconds. A full minute, two, nothing. When I finally opened the door, the path was empty. But right on the doormat, someone had dropped a single key. Old brass engraved with a number I didn't recognize. 47. That number chilled me. Grave 47. The one everyone avoided. I didn't want to touch it, but leaving it there felt worse. I picked it up, dropped it into my pocket, and went back inside. For the rest of the night, I kept hearing faint clinks, like the other keys brushing against it in protest. By the next morning, the ringing had stopped completely. I convinced myself it was a prank. Maybe Marty again, the day guy who loved messing with me. But when I showed him the brass key, his face changed. Where'd you get that? Outside the shack. Someone left it. He swallowed hard. We don't use that key anymore. It's from the old crypts below the tower. They were sealed years ago. Why? He hesitated. Too many break-ins. Too many accidents. I didn't ask more. But that night, when I came in, the first thing I noticed was that my key ring felt heavier. When I counted them, there were 23 now. The brass key had attached itself to the ring. At midnight, the ringing started again. But this time, it wasn't just one pattern. It was dozens of tiny tones overlapping like a chorus of metal whispers. I pulled the ring off my belt and dropped it onto the desk. The keys bounced once and then rearranged themselves, twisting slightly like something beneath them was moving. I swear I saw one of them rotate on its own, slowly aligning the brass one to face upward. Then they all went still. And from somewhere outside, I heard it. A door creaking open. There shouldn't have been any open doors. Every mausoleum gate had been locked for years. I checked them nightly. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped outside. The fog swallowed everything. The air had that electric stillness before a storm. Though the sky was perfectly clear, the sound came again. A metal door slamming shut in the distance. I followed it down the gravel path, past rows of stones until I reached the old maintenance tunnel entrance. A small iron door set into the hillside. It was open. The lock was broken clean off, and hanging from the latch was another ring of keys, identical to mine. I should have run. I didn't. I shined the flashlight into the tunnel. The air inside was colder, heavier. The smell of rust hit immediately. The light caught faint writing on the walls, scratched messages overlapping one, another, locked in. Still hear them. The keys ring before they come. My breath fogged in front of me. Somewhere deep inside, the metallic chiming started again, faint at first, then growing louder. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. The keys on my belt began to vibrate so violently they hummed. The sound in the tunnel became unbearable, hundreds of tiny chimes all playing at once. And then a whisper cut through the noise. Give it back. The light flickered. I caught a glimpse of movement ahead. Pale hands reaching out from the dark, clutching at the walls, one by one. Shapes started to emerge, outlines of figures translucent, faces twisted like they were still screaming. Each one had something hanging from their belts. Keys old, rusted, hundreds of them. The chorus of chiming filled the air again, and I realized it wasn't just ringing, it was voices. Each tone was a syllable, each chime a word. Together they formed one phrase, repeating over and over, "Give it back, give it back, give it back." The brass key on my ring grew hot. I tore it off and dropped it. The second it hit the floor, the sound cut out. Everything went silent. The tunnel walls stopped moving. The air thinned. And then from the dark ahead, one figure stepped forward. Tall, hollow-eyed, jaw half gone. A uniform, same as mine. He held up an empty ring of keys and said, "It was mine." Then he vanished. I found myself back outside, flat on the gravel path, gasping for air. The iron door was sealed again. The brass key was gone, but when I looked down, my own key ring had changed, back to 22 keys, except one of them was cracked down the middle, humming softly, almost like it was breathing. I quit a few days later, told them I couldn't do nights anymore. But sometimes when I drive past the cemetery, I can hear it again, the faint chiming of metal against metal, coming from somewhere deep below the hill, and the sound always spells the same word. I've been a gravedigger for almost 20 years, and nothing in this job ever scared me until grave 56. It started like any other night, cold, damp, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your own heartbeat sound loud. I was finishing late because of a collapse earlier that week. A corner of the cemetery's old section had caved in after heavy rain, and management wanted the soil reset before sunrise. The grave in question belonged to a man named Daniel Wexler, buried in 1983. The record said he was a preacher, died of a heart attack during Sunday service. There was nothing special about the site, no weird symbols, no urban legends. Just another patch of ground that needed fixing. But when I got there, the dirt looked wrong. It wasn't sunken or muddy. It was fresh, smooth, dark, new. Like someone had just finished digging and filling it within the last hour. I stood there staring, shovel in hand, trying to figure out who could have done it. There were no tracks, no tire marks from a loader. The earth was perfectly leveled, even moist like it had been turned recently. I leaned down, pressed my glove into it, warm. That's what really messed with me. Soil doesn't stay warm after being moved unless something under it is generating heat. I told myself maybe a pipe was leaking underground, or the decaying process was doing something weird. But the graveyard had no heat lines, no nearby maintenance tunnels. The thought that crossed my mind next was the one I couldn't shake. What if someone's inside? I started digging. Not deep at first, just enough to see if something was buried above the coffin. The first few scoops came up easy. The dirt was soft, almost loose, as if it hadn't compacted yet. After a few minutes, I hit something solid, not wood, not metal, something soft. The shovel slid in, then stopped like it hit flesh. I dropped the tool and crouched, brushed the soil aside with my gloved hands. The beam from my headlamp cut across a pale, round shape. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. A human face. Eyes closed. Skin gray-blue, but it wasn't decomposed and it looked fresh. I scrambled backward so fast I slipped in the loose dirt. My brain went white. The body, if it even was one, didn't make sense. There shouldn't have been anyone new buried here. The coffin was supposed to be 6 feet down, sealed decades ago, and this face, it was above that. I forced myself to look again, heart pounding. The eyes were still shut. The lips were parted slightly, like mid-breath. Then the soil shifted. Just a small tremor, like something moving beneath it. The head tilted. A puff of damp air escaped its mouth. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the maintenance shed. My boots left clumps of mud across the concrete floor as I slammed the door shut and locked it. For a while, I just sat there breathing hard, staring at my shovel still covered in wet soil. Every rational part of me was screaming that it had to be a trick, a prop, a prank, something left by kids. But that face, it wasn't plastic. The skin texture, the color, the way it moved, I knew real bodies. I'd buried enough of them, and the warmth. You don't forget that. I poured myself a cup of bad coffee from the thermos, trying to steady my hands. I even laughed once. A hollow, shaky laugh that didn't sound like mine. Then something thumped against the shed wall. Once. Then again. 3 slow knocks. Heavy and dull, coming from the outside wall facing the graves. I froze, staring at the door. "Who's there?" I called, but my voice came out rough. Nothing. Then, faintly from the distance, scrape. 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 Like someone dragging a shovel through wet dirt. I peered through the small window, but the fog had thickened. I could only make out shadows of the headstones, blurred and shifting. Then, for a split second, the beam from the shed's security light caught movement. The grave I'd been digging, grave 56, was smooth again. Perfectly refilled. I didn't sleep that night. I waited in the shed until dawn, too scared to move. When the sun finally came up, I forced myself to go check. The soil looked untouched. No footprints, no sign of disturbance. Just that faint, unnatural smoothness, like someone had brushed it over by hand. But the thing that really messed with me? The shovel I'd left behind in the grave was gone. I filed a report later that morning. The site manager, a guy named Rick, told me I was probably overtired. Graves don't refill themselves, he said. You probably didn't dig that deep. He sent 2 younger guys to recheck the area. They dug down a couple feet, found nothing unusual, then filled it back up. Everything looked normal, until 2 nights later, when the same grave sank again. Rick called me at 3 a.m., pissed off and half asleep. You better not be screwing with me, Tom, he said. That plot's shifting again. Soil's fresh like someone's been at it. I haven't touched it, I told him. Then who the hell did? We both went out there before sunrise. The grave looked exactly the same as before. Freshly packed, no tracks, no loose soil. Rick kicked the dirt a few times, then shrugged. Might be a drainage issue, he said, but when he dug his boot heel in, he stopped. Steam. Thin wisps rising up from the dirt. He pulled back his foot, frowned. You seeing this? I nodded, too afraid to say anything. He crouched, touched the soil. Warm. Then his expression changed. That moment when curiosity slides into something darker. I'm calling the county, he said. Maybe there's a gas leak or something. But the county came, tested it, and found nothing. No methane, no pipes, no heat source, just earth. I begged Rick to seal it off. He refused. We can't just close a plot because you got spooked, he said. We'll fill it again and pour concrete over it if we have to. So we did. 3 feet of mixed soil, then a concrete slab on top. Problem solved, or so I thought. That night, I woke up at home to a sound that didn't belong in my house. Shoveling, slow, methodical. I sat up, heart pounding. It was coming from outside, right by my window. When I looked, there was nothing. Just the faint outline of my tool shed in the yard. I told myself it was the wind, maybe raccoons. But when I went out in the morning, there was a pile of fresh dirt right outside the shed door, and sitting on top of it, my missing shovel. The handle was wet. The blade still caked with soil, and carved into the metal, shallow but deliberate, were 3 words. Stop burying me. I didn't go to work that day. I called in sick. Rick thought I was joking, but by evening he was the one calling me, voice shaking, breath fast. Tom, you need to come see this. I drove back to the cemetery, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. When I pulled up to the site, Rick was standing by grave 56, staring down. The concrete slab we'd poured, broken clean in half, and the grave beneath it, refilled again perfectly, as if it had never been touched. Rick didn't say a word. He just looked at me like he wanted me to explain it. I told you, I whispered. It won't stay down. He swallowed, jaw tight. We're closing this section. No more digging here. You log everything and go home. So I did. But before I left, I looked back one last time. The morning light was just starting to rise, hitting the headstones at an angle. For a moment, I could have sworn the earth over grave 56 shifted, just slightly. Like something underneath was breathing. I didn't go back to the cemetery for 2 days. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that pale face under the dirt, the way it exhaled, like it was trying to breathe through the soil. But on the 3rd night, Rick called again. This time, he didn't sound angry. He sounded broken. Tom, he said quietly. You were right. Those words froze me. What do you mean? Grave 56, it's open again. I didn't want to go. I told him to call the police to let it be. But he just whispered, you need to see it, please. So I drove out there. The cemetery looked wrong that night. Too quiet. The fog didn't move like it usually did. It hung in the air, still and thick, swallowing sound. Rick's truck was parked by the maintenance shed, engine off, lights still on. He wasn't inside. When I followed the beam of his flashlight through the rows of graves, I found him standing at the edge of 56, staring down. The dirt wasn't flat anymore. It was split open like the ground had exhaled. The slab we'd poured was shattered again, not chipped, not cracked, but cleanly lifted in 2 halves like something had pushed it from below. And the air, it was warm again. Rick didn't look at me. His voice was thin, distant. I stayed after hours yesterday. Tried filling it myself. I buried a camera down there. I blinked. A camera? He nodded. Wanted to see who was doing it. Set it to record overnight. Went home, checked the footage this morning. He paused, still staring into the grave. You need to see it. We went back to the shack. The monitor was already on. A feed paused at 3:16 a.m. The frame showed the inside of the grave, the dirt packed tight, nothing moving. The timestamp flicked forward. Then at 3:17 the soil started to breathe. That's the only word I can use. It swelled and sank like lungs under a blanket. At 3:18, the surface cracked and something pale pushed through, not a hand, not a head, just the shape of a shoulder sliding upward with impossible smoothness. The dirt poured off like water. Then another form appeared beside it. Another shoulder, two bodies. Crawling up, the footage cut to static. Rick was shaking. I came back this morning. There was no sign of them. Ground was flat again. "Where's the camera now?" I asked. He looked at me slowly. "Gone." The silence after that was thick. The hum of the light fixture. The faint whir of the monitor. Every sound felt too loud. Then, from outside, something clanged. We both turned. It came from the grave. When we got there, the ground was still again, white smooth, untouched. But something new had been placed on top of it. A small wooden cross. Fresh wood, freshly carved. Rick frowned. "That wasn't here this morning." He bent to pick it up. I don't know why, but every nerve in my body screamed not to let him. "Don't touch it," I said, louder than I meant to. He looked up, confused. And that's when the ground shifted beneath his boots. It didn't sink. It pulled. The soil collapsed inward like a mouth opening, and Rick fell halfway before I could grab him. "Rick!" I dropped to my knees, grabbing his arm, trying to pull him back. His face went pale. "Something's got me." The ground was swallowing him. The dirt around his legs moved like liquid, pulling him down inch by inch. I dug my hands into the soil, trying to free him, but it was hot. Burning hot. Like grabbing coals. "Let go," he screamed. "It's pulling me under." Then his hand slipped. I swear to God, I saw fingers, gray, slick fingers, reach up from below and wrap around his wrist, and then he was gone. The ground sealed itself shut like nothing had happened. No sign of Rick, no trace of struggle, just that smooth patch of dirt. And in the center, the wooden cross, standing upright again. I don't remember running back to the shack. I don't remember calling 911. All I remember is the operator's voice on the phone asking for my location, while I stared at the grave through the window. By the time the police came, the cross was gone too. They searched the site for 2 days. No sign of Rick. The camera, his flashlight, his tools, gone. They marked it as a disappearance. But I knew better. I quit the next morning. Packed up my locker, left the key, didn't say goodbye, but leaving didn't help. Every night after that, I woke to the sound of digging. At first, I thought it was in my head. Then I checked my yard. Small piles of fresh dirt kept appearing near my fence line. And one morning, I found something worse, a wooden cross, same kind as the one from the grave, freshly carved and burned into the wood, in jagged letters, was one word: return. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my truck parked outside my house, watching the yard through the windshield. Around 2:30 a.m., the motion light clicked on. Something moved by the shed. I grabbed my flashlight, heart hammering, and stepped outside. The air smelled like wet soil and something faintly metallic, the same smell from the grave. When I shined the light, I saw footprints. Bare feet. Mud-caked, leading from the back fence straight toward the shed. The door was ajar. Inside, the shovel I'd thrown out weeks ago was propped against the wall, clean, polished, and on the ground beneath it, another wooden cross. This one had 2 words carved in it. "He's waiting." I burned it that same night. Threw the ashes down the drain, poured bleach, salt, anything. But the smell of dirt didn't leave. It followed me into the house. By dawn, I could taste it in the air. When I looked out the window, my yard was covered in small holes. Not deep, just shallow scoops like someone testing the ground, and in the very center, one hole larger than the rest, shaped like a grave. I packed my things and left town that morning, rented a cheap motel 3 counties over. No one knew me there. I paid in cash, told them I was a traveling handyman. For 2 weeks, things were quiet until last night. It started again. The sound. Not outside this time. Beneath me. I was sitting on the edge of the bed when I heard it. Faint at first, like scratching under the floorboards. Then the rhythm changed, that slow, steady shovel in, shovel out. The smell came next. Wet earth, old roots. I pressed my ear to the carpet. The sound was clearer now, closer. I pulled the carpet up and saw something dark seeping through the cracks in the floorboards. Soil. I ran out of the room, down the hall, heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. The front desk guy shouted something after me, but I didn't stop until I was outside. When I looked back, the window of my room was open, and on the sill, a small pile of dirt, with a wooden cross sticking out of it. No writing this time, just silence. I didn't go back for my stuff. I drove until morning, until the sun burned through the fog, but wherever I go, the dirt follows. The smell sticks to my clothes. The car floor. Even the inside of my mouth sometimes tastes like soil. I've started having dreams again, same as before. In them, I'm back at grave 56, only this time, I'm the one under the dirt. I can hear someone above me shoveling. I try to scream, but the soil fills my mouth, and when I open my eyes, I see faces all around me in the dark, gray, half-rotted, whispering the same words over and over. Stop burying us. Let us stay out. It's been 3 weeks since Rick disappeared. They found his truck abandoned near the cemetery gates. But no one goes near the plot anymore. I checked the news yesterday. They're building a new access road right through that area. They're going to dig again. I tried warning them. Sent letters, emails, everything. No response. Last night I heard the shoveling again. Closer than ever. Not under me this time. Behind me. When I turned around, there was a mound of fresh dirt in the corner of the motel room. No hole. No pile from before. Just that mound, and sticking out of it, half buried, was a nameplate, the kind we used for grave markers. I brushed the dirt away and read it. Thomas Grady, 1972-2025. That's my name. My birth year. The soil started moving again. I dropped the marker, back toward the door, but it was already too late. The dirt shifted, forming the faint outline of a body, shoulders, head, chest. And from beneath it came the voice I hadn't heard since that night in the graveyard. Faint. Familiar. Tom, help me. Rick's voice. Then, just like before, the ground exhaled. Warm, sweet, heavy. And I felt something wrap around my ankle. I tried to scream, but the dirt poured over my mouth before I could. The first time I saw the lantern, I thought it was a trick of the fog. That was my first week as night watch at Westbrook Cemetery. I'd only been assigned Section C once before, the oldest part, where most of the graves were too faded to read. That night, the fog was thick enough to muffle my footsteps. My flashlight barely reached the next headstone, and the silence felt wrong, like the air itself was listening. I remember checking my watch. 12:47 a.m. Then I saw it. A faint orange glow moving slowly between the graves about 50 yards ahead. At first I figured it was one of the grounds crew, but no one else was scheduled to be there that night. I called out, "Hey, who's out there?" The light stopped, hung in the fog. Then just as suddenly it started moving again, away from me this time. That's when I realized something that made my skin crawl. The light wasn't bouncing the way a flashlight would. It flickered, like fire a lantern. I followed it, telling myself I was being stupid. Probably a trespasser, a hiker, or maybe one of those people who come to take ghost photos. But as I walked deeper into Section C, everything around me started to feel different, colder, heavier. The fog wasn't drifting anymore. It was hanging, suspended like smoke that didn't want to move. The light flickered again, cutting between the trees, then vanished completely. When I reached the spot where I thought it had been, there was nothing. Just headstones, gold leaning, most of them cracked down the middle, and silence so deep it hurt my ears. I turned to head back when I noticed something carved into one of the stones. Fresh marks. The name on the grave was completely scratched out, replaced by a single line of letters gouged into the marble. "Follow the light." I stepped back, pulse racing. I hadn't noticed that on my first patrol. The cuts were clean, sharp-edged, like they'd been made that day. Then my radio crackled to life. Only it wasn't dispatch. It was static at first, then a faint whisper. "Don't." I froze. Who is this? No response. Just static and then the sound of breathing. Slow, close. Then it cut off completely. When I got back to the shack, I tried to laugh it off. The wind, the fog, the isolation, it gets to you. Every night guard hears something eventually. But when I hung up my jacket, something fell from the pocket, a scrap of paper, folded, damp, edges torn. I unfolded it, and my stomach turned to ice. Inside was a smudged drawing, a lantern, hand sketched in pencil with a dark shape standing beside it, and underneath, in shaky handwriting, "Don't follow it again." I didn't sleep the next day. I told myself I'd imagined it, that maybe some kid slipped the note in my jacket as a prank, but I kept thinking about that carved message, like follow the light. The next night, I told myself I wouldn't go near Section C. I even planned a route that stayed in the newer areas, but around 1 a.m., my flashlight flickered out, and through the dark, I saw that same orange glow again, closer this time, hovering just beyond the fence line that separated Section B from C. It pulsed once, like it was waiting, and then it started moving, slow and steady into the fog. I should have stayed put, but I followed it. The air felt different as soon as I crossed into Section C. The smell of wet earth hit hard, not like rain-soaked dirt, but old rot, like something buried too long. The light drifted ahead between the graves, never speeding up, never slowing down, and then, just as before, it stopped. Right over a grave I hadn't noticed before. The name on the headstone was eroded, but I could still make out the date 1879 and something else. The carving below it wasn't English. Curved letters, looping symbols that almost looked like a name written backward. The lantern hovered right above it. I swear it did. The light hung in the air for maybe 5-6 seconds. Then it started to fade. I reached out, and that was the worst mistake I've ever made. The second my hand brushed that light, the fog moved. Not like wind. It shifted in one solid motion, like water swirling around me. My flashlight dropped from my hand and hit the dirt. The lantern went out. Everything went black. I couldn't see anything. Not my hands, not the graves. The only thing I could hear was breathing, not mine. Deeper. Slower. Coming from right behind me. I turned, backing up, reaching for my radio, but the static started before I could speak. "You shouldn't have touched it." The voice was low, distorted, like someone talking through broken glass. Then silence, and the lantern lit again. But now it was right in front of me, hanging in midair, less than a foot away. And behind it, something was holding it. At first I thought it was a person, a woman maybe, long dress, old-fashioned, almost transparent in the flickering light. But her face, God, her face, it wasn't there. Just a blur, like fog pressed into human shape. The lantern dangled from one thin arm and the light burned too bright, turning the air golden black at once. When she moved, the ground around her shifted, cracking like something underneath was trying to push up. I stumbled backward, tripped over a gravestone, and the lantern flickered, once, twice, then went dark. The next thing I remember is waking up on the ground cold, my flashlight lying beside me. It was 3:02 a.m. I was still in Section C, but the grave I'd been standing over, the one with the strange carvings, was open. The dirt around it was fresh. Too fresh. I leaned over the edge and shined my light inside. It wasn't deep, maybe 3 feet down. But the coffin was broken open, wood splintered and black with rot, and inside was a lantern, same shape, same size, still burning. I don't know how long I stood there staring at it. The flame didn't move, didn't flicker, just glowed steady like it was alive. Then faintly, I heard footsteps behind me, slow, crunching the gravel. I turned, but there was no one there. When I looked back, the lantern in the coffin was gone. In its place was a piece of paper folded once. I reached down, grabbed it, and opened it under my flashlight. Same handwriting as the first note. "It knows you now." I didn't finish the shift. I ran back to the shack, locked the door, and sat there till dawn, shaking. When the day shift came in, I told them I'd seen someone trespassing. They laughed it off, but I insisted they check Section C. They didn't find anything unusual. No footprints, no open graves. No lanterns, but one of them, a younger guy named Luis, came back holding something. "Hey," he said, setting it on the counter. "This yours?" It was a lantern, old brass. Handle worn smooth, empty. No oil, no wick. Just a faint smell, like smoke that hadn't burned out yet. That night, I left the cemetery before dark. I told the supervisor I'd work mornings instead. He didn't care, said he needed a body for the early shift anyway. But as I drove home, I saw something that made my stomach twist. In the rearview mirror, through the fog behind the cemetery gates, a single orange light, flickering, following. For a few days, I convinced myself it was over. No more fog, no more lights, no more breathing that wasn't mine. I kept to day shifts, raking leaves, trimming hedges, anything to keep my hands busy. I even stopped driving past the cemetery after dark, but on the fourth night I woke up to the smell of smoke. Not the sharp smell of fire, sweeter, older. Like lamp oil, I sat up fast. My room was dim, lit only by the orange glow leaking through the window. And there it was, a lantern, hanging from the branch of the maple outside my house. I threw on a jacket and stepped outside barefoot. The grass was wet, the air cold enough to sting my skin. The light swayed gently even though the wind was dead still. The flame inside wasn't normal. It didn't flicker yellow. It burned white-orange, pulsing like a heartbeat. I stood there staring at it until I realized there were footprints in the dew. Small, bare prints leading from the street to the tree. When I followed them, they just stopped, vanished halfway across the yard. I looked up. The lantern wasn't hanging anymore. It was sitting on my porch steps. I didn't touch it. I just whispered, "What do you want from me?" The flame flared, then dimmed, and when it dimmed, I saw a reflection in the glass, and not mine. A face, a woman's face, pale and wet, eyes too wide, lips cracked. She mouthed something. I couldn't hear it at first, but the shape of the word was clear. Return. Then the flame went out, and the glass shattered. When I looked down, all that was left was a pool of black oil soaking into the porch wood. The next morning I went back to Westbrook. I told myself I'd just quit properly, pick up my last paycheck, be done with it. But when I got there, the supervisor, a woman named Karen, was already waiting outside the office, talking to the police. They were dragging crime scene tape across the gate to Section C. Karen saw me and went pale. "Tom," she said, "where have you been?" "What happened?" She swallowed. "We found Luis this morning, the kid from day shift." I didn't want to ask, but she kept talking anyway. "He was in Section C, looked like he'd been digging. His lantern was lit." She hesitated, voice breaking. "And his eyes were burned. The cops called it an accident. Said the kid probably fell into one of the old open pits, maybe spilled fuel, maybe a spark caught. But I knew better." I walked up to the yellow tape when no one was looking. The fog was already rolling back in from the trees, heavy and low. In the dirt, I saw something sticking out near the grave from before, the one with the strange carved letters. It was the same brass lantern I'd seen in my yard. I could tell by the crack in the handle, and hanging from it, tied with twine, was another note. "You never stopped following." That night I stayed in a motel outside of town, too wired to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the white flame again burning behind my eyelids. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number, just one message. "Look outside." I didn't want to, but of course I did. The parking lot was empty except for my truck, and behind it, halfway across the road, a faint orange glow hovered in the fog. I stared until the glass of the window started to fog from my breath. When I wiped it clear, the light was closer. I ran, didn't grab my things, didn't lock the door, just sprinted to the truck, slammed it into reverse, and tore out of the lot. I didn't stop until I hit the highway. For 10 straight minutes, I drove without looking in the mirrors. When I finally did, I wished I hadn't. The light was still there, a small, steady glow following me in the distance. Keeping pace no matter how fast I went, I drove until sunrise. When the light faded, I pulled over and cried until I couldn't breathe. By noon, I was back at the cemetery. I don't even know why. Maybe because I thought if I finished what started there, it would stop. Section C was closed off, but the tape was torn. Someone had already gone in. When I reached the old grave, I saw the dirt had been moved again. only a shallow trench now, like something had clawed its way out. And there, sitting in the middle, was the lantern, still burning. I stepped closer, hand shaking. "What are you?" I whispered. The flame bent toward me, stretching tall, almost forming a shape, a figure in the firelight. Then the voice came again. "You took my light." A gust of wind blew the fog back, and for the first time I saw what lay beneath the grave. It wasn't a coffin anymore. It was a pit, a tunnel spiraling down into black. The lantern's light reached only a few feet before it vanished into the dark, and somewhere below, faintly, something moved. I should have run. Instead, I climbed down. The walls were slick and cold. The deeper I went, the hotter it got, the air thick and heavy like the inside of a furnace. The tunnel ended in a small chamber made of stone. In the center stood an old iron post, and hanging from it was another lantern, lit identical to the one above, and sitting cross-legged beside it, back against the wall, was a woman, or what was left of one. Her skin looked half-burned, half-melted like wax near a candle. The empty sockets where her eyes should have been glowed faint orange from the light beside her. She turned her head when I stepped closer. "You followed," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was sad. "Who are you?" "The keeper," she whispered. "You took what wasn't yours." "I didn't take anything." She tilted her head and the lantern flame flared. "It followed you because you wanted to see. And now you've seen." I stepped back. The heat was unbearable. "What do you want from me?" Her voice cracked. "To rest." Then she raised her hand, and I saw the chain on her wrist, tethered to the lantern pole. "I keep the light," she said softly. "Someone always must." The flame stretched toward me again, brighter, taller, until it filled the chamber. I tried to climb back up, but the heat burned my palms. My vision blurred. Her voice echoed behind me. "You saw it." "You touched it. It's yours now." The light swallowed everything. When I woke, it was morning. I was lying beside the open grave in Section C, hands blistered, clothes soaked in oil. The hole beneath was gone. The sheriff's deputy found me an hour later, said they'd received reports of smoke, but nothing was burning. They sent me to the hospital, checked for chemical exposure, hallucination. Everything came back clean. But when they handed me my personal items, I saw it, my keychain, with a small brass lantern charm attached. It wasn't there before. It's been 3 days since then. At night, my hands still glow faintly in the dark, tiny orange veins under the skin, and every time I close my eyes, I hear her voice, soft and distant. "Keep the light. I haven't slept more than an hour at a time." The lantern appears wherever I go now, in mirrors, in windows, reflected off car metal. Sometimes I think I see her standing inside the flame, watching, waiting. I don't patrol cemeteries anymore. But tonight, as I sit here writing this, the room is starting to smell like smoke again. And outside my window, something flickers, not a streetlight, not a car, a lantern, burning, steady, patient, waiting for me to answer. The first time I heard the whistling, I thought it was the wind cutting through the cracks of the mausoleums. It was around 2 a.m., and I was halfway through my shift, doing my usual patrol through the east side, the oldest part of the cemetery, where the graves were stacked close and the tombs looked like stone closets left to rot. It wasn't a normal wind sound, though. It had a rhythm to it. 3 short notes, pause, 2 long ones, like someone trying to remember a tune. The weird part? It wasn't coming from above the ground. It was coming from inside one of the tombs. You spend enough nights around the dead, and you learn to tune things out. Shifting dirt, creaking gates, even the occasional muffled sound from the city. But this was different. The whistling came in bursts, each note soft and almost playful. I froze by the gate of Row D where the family crypts start. My flashlight beam danced across the names. Donahue, Keller, Ray, Benson. The sound was coming from the Benson tomb, a big marble one with iron doors and carved angels that had lost their faces to time. I stood there, listening. The notes came again, slower this time. 3, pause. 2, it was like the person, or thing, inside was waiting for me to reply. I cleared my throat. "Who's in there?" No answer. The whistling stopped. Then, after maybe 5 seconds of silence, something tapped twice against the inside of the tomb door. Tap. Tap. I felt my whole body go cold. I backed away, radio in hand. "Dispatch, this is Tom from Westbrook. I've got possible vandalism near the Benson Tomb, Section E. Might be someone trapped inside." Static, then a faint reply. "Copy that." Sending a unit, I waited, but I never heard the confirmation tone. The radio just clicked off on its own. I stood there trying to convince myself not to run. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of wet stone and old flowers. Then, so faint I almost missed it, the whistling started again. Same notes, same rhythm. Only now it was being answered. Another set of notes coming from farther away, maybe across the yard. 2 people, whistling to each other. My chest tightened. I swept the flashlight around, but the fog had thickened so much I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The beam caught the glint of wet marble, the hollow eyes of angel statues, but nothing moving. Then both whistles stopped at once. Silence. And then, a single exhale right behind me. I spun around. Nothing, but the air was warm on my neck, like someone had just leaned close enough to breathe. I started backing up toward the shack, every step crunching on the gravel path. That's when I heard it again. Faint, but no mistaking it. Tap, tap. This time it was coming from another tomb. I turned toward it. The Ray family crypt. Its doors were sealed with concrete. The top half was covered in ivy. The sound came again, louder. Tap. Tap then from inside. "It's cold." I froze. My stomach dropped. That voice. It sounded like a man muffled through stone, calm, almost conversational. "It's cold," it said again. "Can you open the door?" My flashlight flickered. When it steadied, there were smudges on the inside of the tomb's glass window. Handprints. I stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. There shouldn't be a window. These tombs were sealed decades ago. But through that fogged glass, I could see shapes moving. Slow, like someone dragging their hand along the inside wall. Then the whistling started again. Closer now, echoing all around me. It wasn't coming from a single tomb anymore. It was everywhere. Dozens of voices, all whistling the same tune. 3 short. Pause. 2 long. I bolted. Didn't care if I tripped or dropped the flashlight. I just ran. The sound followed me across the rows, echoing from tomb to tomb like the whole graveyard was breathing through cracked stone. When I reached the main path, I stopped to catch my breath. My ears were ringing from the cold. My breath came out in white bursts, and somewhere behind me the whistling started again. But this time, it was different. It was coming from above. I looked up. The top of one of the mausoleums, the Big Benson one, was glowing faintly orange, like a candle was burning inside. Someone was standing up there, not moving. Just standing still against the fog. I shined my light, but the beam barely touched them. It looked like a man, but wrong. Too thin, neck tilted to the side, head hanging as if it was straining to listen. Then, in one smooth motion, he brought 2 fingers to his mouth and then whistled, loud, clear. And suddenly, all around me, the tombs answered. I don't remember running back to the shack, but when I slammed the door shut, I realized I was covered in dust and streaked mud, like I'd brushed against every tomb wall in that section. The radio crackled again, static first, then a voice I didn't recognize. "You heard them, didn't you?" "Who is this?" I said, backing into the corner. "The whistlers. They only come when someone listens." The line went dead. I didn't sleep that day. When I came back the next evening, the area around the Benson tomb was sealed off. Caution tape, barricades, the works. Karen, my supervisor, met me with a clipboard. "You're lucky," she said. "One of the mausoleums collapsed last night. Gas buildup, maybe. You were right near it, weren't you?" I nodded, barely hearing her. "Yeah," she sighed. "Stay out of Section E tonight, okay? City wants it closed till they finish the inspection." "Fine by me," I said. But that night, even staying on the far side of the cemetery, I still heard it. Faint, distant, the same tune. 3 short, pause, 2 long. A few nights later, I found something on my patrol clipboard, folded between my notes. A sheet of lined paper, old and yellowed, on it, written in perfect. Steady handwriting. When the tombs whistle, don't answer back. No signature. Just a small charcoal drawing of a mouth. Whistling. The lips weren't human. They were cracked open too wide. Corners stretching past the cheekbones. Now, even during the day, I catch myself hearing it. Faint and soft in the sound of air vents. In the way the wind slips under my door at night. 3 short. Pause. Too long. Sometimes, if I hum a note or two without thinking, I'll hear it again, answering from somewhere in the distance. Always the same rhythm. Always the same waiting silence after, and once, just once, I made the mistake of whistling the full tune back. The air went still. Everything went silent. Then, from right behind my ear, someone whispered, "You're part of the song now." I didn't notice the extra entry until my 3rd week on the job. The logbook sat by the front gate, inside the small marble building that used to serve as the cemetery's chapel. We called it the visitor's book, though almost nobody signed it anymore. Most people just came to leave flowers and leave again. But that night, a quiet Tuesday around 2:30 a.m., I found a new signature on the last page. Fresh ink. Still wet, it read, "I'll see you soon, M." At first, I figured some kid had snuck in before closing. But the signature was careful, precise. It looked deliberate, not like graffiti. The weirdest part was the time. Under the name in tiny handwriting it said, 2:24 a.m., the same time I'd been doing my patrol in Section B, a good 5 minutes walk from the chapel. No one had passed me. No lights, no footsteps, no cars outside, and yet someone had been here. Inside, writing in the book. I flipped back through the pages. The last legit signature before that was dated 3 weeks earlier, when a family came for a daytime burial. But further back, I noticed something strange. Every few pages, someone named M had signed the book, always alone, always at night, no full name, just the letter. The earliest one I could find was from 1987. I told myself it was a prank. Maybe someone on staff was messing with me. But the longer I looked at that handwriting, the more it didn't feel like a joke. The ink wasn't from a ballpoint pen. It looked like it had been written with a fountain pen. Dark, slightly bled into the paper, and underneath that fresh signature, almost invisible until I angled the flashlight, were faint smudges. Like someone had tried to write something else. And erased it. I leaned closer. The paper smelled faintly of smoke and something sweet, like old perfume. That's when the door to the chapel creaked behind me. I turned fast. The beam of my flashlight hit nothing but dust floating in the air. "Hello," I called, no answer. I stepped outside. The air was colder than before, the kind of damp chill that seeps through your clothes. The fog was rolling low over the headstones, brushing the tops like fingers. For a few seconds, I could have sworn I saw someone walking between the graves, a tall shape, moving slow. When I shined the light, they were gone, only footprints in the grass, bare ones. The next day I brought it up with my supervisor, Karen. She sighed like she was tired of hearing about weird stuff. "Yeah, that's been there forever," she said. "Old tradition." The visitor's book was for mourners who came after hours. Back when they left the gate unlocked. "After hours?" I asked. "You mean people who couldn't come during the day," she said. "Families, lovers, ghost chasers. Who knows? But someone signed it last night," I said. "At 2:24. She looked at me then. Really looked. "You sure about that?" "Positive." She hesitated. "Then don't touch it again. Just leave it open where you found it." I tried. I really did. But that night, when I passed the chapel again, I couldn't stop myself from looking. The book was still open to the same page, but the ink had changed. The signature that had been fresh and dark earlier now looked old. Faded brown, like it had been there for years. And beneath it, written in new ink, was another line. "I saw you reading." I dropped the book so hard it slapped against the wood podium. The sound echoed through the tiny chapel. I grabbed my radio, but all I got was static, the same hollow buzz I'd heard before something weird happened in this place. When the static cleared, a voice came through. "Not dispatch, don't read again." I froze. "Who is this?" "It's not for you." Then silence. The air in the chapel felt thicker suddenly, heavy like humidity before a storm. My breath fogged the flashlight beam, and then, The pages of the book started flipping on their own. Slow at first, then faster, whipping forward until they stopped somewhere near the middle. I don't know why, but I leaned in. The page it landed on was dated October 12th, 1991. Dozens of signatures filled the sheet, some familiar, some smudged beyond reading. But one name was circled in dark ink: Margaret F. Benson, Section C, Plot 47. The name made me flinch, the same last name from another grave I'd seen weeks before. And below her signature, written faintly in pencil, was a message I hadn't noticed before: still waiting for my visitor. I turned toward the chapel doorway, and there she was. A woman standing just outside, framed in the fog, tall, thin, wearing a dark coat that hung too heavy on her frame. She wasn't moving, but I could tell she was facing me, even though I couldn't make out her face. Something about her stillness was wrong, like she'd been standing there long before I noticed her. The beam of my flashlight flickered once, and when it came back, she was gone. I shut the book, locked the chapel, and refused to look back. But as I was heading toward the main path, I heard it flip, the sound of a page turning, then another and another, until the door unlocked. I swear it was locked, creaked open again behind me. The book lay open on the podium. This time, the handwriting filled the entire page. You shouldn't have closed it. You're one of them now. Sign your name. I didn't. I ran. The rest of that shift, I stayed by the gate pretending to check vehicles, refusing to go anywhere near the chapel again. When dawn came, I left the key on the desk and went home shaking. But the thing is, I can't stop thinking about the book, about the way the ink bled into the page, about that smell of smoke and perfume, and about the woman outside, how she never took a step, never breathed, like she was waiting for me to do something. 2 nights later, I dreamed about it. I was standing in the chapel again, holding a pen that wasn't mine. The book was open to a blank page, and the pen kept moving even when I tried to stop it. The ink poured out faster than it should have, soaking through the paper, running like blood. When I woke up, my hands smelled like smoke, and under my fingernails, there was ink. I called Karen that morning, told her I quit. She didn't sound surprised, just sighed and said, "It happens. They always quit after reading it." "They who?" I asked. She hesitated. "The ones it likes." Then she hung up. It's been a week now. I still dream about that chapel. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and swear I can smell that same faint perfume. Roses, maybe. And when I turn on the light, I see flecks of dark ink on my sheets. I tried to wash my hands earlier, but one of my nails, my thumb, still has a thin black line underneath it, like a pen stroke. And tonight, I got a letter in the mail, no return address, no postage mark, and inside was a single piece of paper, cream-colored, old. It just said, "Visitor's entry, October 18th, 2025. Name Tom, signed at 2:24 a.m. The same time that first name appeared, and at the bottom, written in tiny cursive, "Thank you for finally visiting me." I didn't know I had a twin until the night I saw him digging my grave. It was around 1:10 a.m., a fog-heavy Thursday at Westbrook Cemetery, the kind of night when the mist clings to your clothes and every shadow feels like it's watching. I'd been on night duty for a little over 6 months then. Section G was my usual round, when the far back corner. Mostly unmarked graves and one old maintenance shed no one used anymore. That's where I first saw him. I was halfway through my patrol when my flashlight caught movement near the shed. Someone was crouched by a fresh mound of dirt, digging fast. The shovel scraped like metal on stone, too loud, too hard. "Hey," I yelled, walking closer. "You can't be here after hours." The man stopped digging, slowly straightened. He turned toward me and my whole body froze. He was wearing my uniform, my jacket, even the same damn beanie. And when my flashlight hit his face, it was my face. For a few seconds I couldn't breathe. I thought maybe it was some kind of reflection, a trick of the fog, but he was real. He had the same build, same beard, same scar above the eyebrow, and the one I'd gotten from a nail when I was 12. We stared at each other, both of us silent. Then he tilted his head, almost like he was studying me. And he smiled, not a full smile, just the corners of his mouth twitching upward, enough to make my stomach twist. "Who are you?" I said, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. He just pointed to the ground where he'd been digging. There was a headstone there, brand new. My flashlight beam caught the engraving. Thomas Reed, 1992-2025, my name, my birthday, and the date, today's date. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. "This isn't funny," I said, trying to sound angry instead of terrified. "Who are you?" He didn't speak. He just leaned on the shovel and kept smiling, like he'd been waiting for me to show up. Then, without breaking eye contact, he lifted the shovel and drove it back into the dirt. Thunk. He started digging again. I turned and ran. Back at the main shack, I locked the door and tried to radio dispatch, static. Then the radio came alive, faint, crackling. "Tom." I froze. "Why'd you run?" The voice was my own, same tone, same inflection. I threw the radio down. The static hissed for a few seconds before dying out completely. I didn't tell Karen, my supervisor, about what happened. How could I? Hey, I saw myself digging my own grave last night. Wasn't exactly something that went over well in a staff meeting, but I couldn't get it out of my head. That face. That grave. The way the dirt had looked, like soft, fresh, darker than the others. The weirdest part? When I went back the next afternoon, there was nothing there. No fresh mound. No headstone. Just flat-packed earth like no one had touched it in months. I started checking the cameras, even though most of them were ancient and only half working. Section G's camera feed was blank, just static and the occasional flicker of light. But every once in a while, when the image did clear up for a few seconds, I'd see someone standing by the shed still watching, and every time the face came into focus, it was mine. A few days later, I started finding things near the shed. First it was my name badge and the one I'd lost weeks ago and given up on. Then it was a torn piece of fabric that matched my uniform. Then, one night a small black notebook appeared on the ground right beside the shed door. No name, no markings. Just mud-stained pages. I shouldn't have opened it. But of course I did. The first entry was written in my handwriting. October 3rd, 2025, 1:10 a.m. He saw me tonight. The look on his face was just like mine when I saw him the first time. The second entry, October 4th, 2025, 12:56 a.m. He keeps running. Doesn't understand yet. I didn't either. But the ground always calls us back. The last entry made my skin crawl. October 7th, 2025, 1:01 a.m. If you're reading this, I'm gone. You'll dig next. That night I refused to go near Section G. I stayed by the gates pretending to do inventory. But sometime around 12:45 my phone buzzed. Unknown number, a photo message. It was a picture of me, standing by the shed, holding a shovel, timestamp 12:44 a.m. I was holding the phone in my hand when the picture was taken. After that, sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him again. Dirt on his face, my face, smiling like he knew something I didn't. And I started noticing small changes in myself. Dark circles under my eyes. Fingers always smelling faintly of soil no matter how many times I washed. Once, I woke up with dirt under my nails. And the shovel, the one we kept locked in the supply closet, was leaning against my bedroom wall. By the fifth night, I stopped pretending it wasn't happening. I went back to Section G. I told myself I was going to end it, whatever it was. The fog was heavier than usual. My flashlight barely cut through it. The shed loomed ahead, roof sagging, door slightly ajar, and there he was again, standing exactly where he'd been before. Shovel in hand, digging. This time he spoke. His voice was hoarse, like it came from inside my own throat. "You took too long." I raised my flashlight, but the beam flickered weakly. "What do you want?" I asked. He smiled again. "Same thing you wanted. What's that?" To stop digging, I stepped closer. The grave was half open, dirt piled high around it, and in the pit below something pale was visible. A face. My face. I fell back, the world tilting. "What is this?" I whispered. He stepped forward, still holding the shovel. It's the only way out. Then he dropped the shovel at my feet. Your turn, I didn't take it. I couldn't. But as I stared down into that open grave, something inside me moved. A pull, deep and cold. Like gravity itself wanted me there. And the dirt started to shift again, slow and steady as if breathing. Then faintly, from inside the grave I heard it. A voice mine, whispering the same thing over and over. Keep digging. I ran again, tripping through the fog until I hit the fence line. When I looked back, the light from my flashlight caught him still standing there, half in shadow, half in the mist. And for a split second I thought I saw him raise his hand in a slow, almost sympathetic wave, like he was telling me goodbye or telling me he'd be back. That morning I called out sick. I didn't go back for 2 days, but on the third day Karen texted me. Hey, you've got a twin or something? Guy came asking for you. Said he's your brother. Looks just like you. I stared at the message until my hands went numb. What did you tell him? I typed. Told him you were off this week. He said he'd wait. Where? Section G said you'd know where to find him. I don't remember putting my shoes on or driving back. But I remember the smell of the fog, wet, metallic, heavy. When I reached the cemetery, everything looked normal. Too normal. The grass was freshly trimmed, the tools neatly stacked, except near the shed. Someone had cleared a new area. A square patch of freshly turned dirt. In the center, a new headstone, blank, and a single shovel planted upright in front of it. As I got closer, I noticed something written in the dirt, just one word, carved with the tip of the shovel, switch. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. The sound of footsteps came from behind the shed, slow, deliberate, crunching through the gravel. And before I could turn, I heard my own voice say, "You took long enough." You took long enough. The sound of my own voice behind me didn't echo, it just hung there, close enough that I could feel the breath of it. I turned slowly. He was standing about 6 feet away, half in fog, half in the weak light spilling from my flashlight. Same face, same jacket, same exhausted eyes. But this time he looked older, not by years, but by wear. Like he'd been doing something for a very, very long time. I raised my hands without realizing it, palms open like I was facing a wild animal. "Who are you?" he smiled. "You already know." "No," I said. "I don't, you're not me." That made him laugh, soft, almost kind. That's what I said too. I didn't answer. The air between us felt like static, like the world had stopped moving. He walked closer, slow and steady, boots crunching the damp grass. "You're where I was," he said. "You see the grave, you hear the whispers, and you run. We all do it first. We?" He didn't answer. He crouched beside the new grave, running his hand through the loose dirt like he was testing its weight. "The ground doesn't forget," he murmured. "It keeps what we give it. Sometimes it gives something back. Why me?" I said. He looked up, and for a moment his eyes caught the light just right, and they weren't mine anymore. They were dull, flat gray. "Like stone, because you dug it," he said. I shook my head. "I didn't dig anything." But then I remembered the shovel, how it had been by my wall that night, how the dirt had been under my nails when I woke up. He stood. "You did. You just don't remember." I wanted to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. The fog was thicker now, wrapping around us both like we were standing underwater. "I can help you," he said. "I can show you." He handed me the shovel. I didn't want to take it. I really didn't. But something in me, something deep animal, reached out and grabbed it. The handle was cold, slick with dew. The weight of it felt wrong. Familiar but heavier, like holding an old memory. He nodded, approving. "Now you see how it begins." "What begins?" He gestured toward the blank headstone. "The remembering." I wanted to run, scream, anything, but instead I found myself lowering the shovel to the ground. I pressed it into the soil, expecting resistance, but it went in smooth, easy. The first scoop of dirt smelled like rain and rust. The second was darker, wetter. And when I turned it, I saw something pale buried in it, a fingertip. Human. I dropped the shovel instantly, stumbling backward. "What the hell is that?" He smiled, that same crooked smile I'd seen the first night. "It's you." I ran. Didn't even look back, but the sound followed me. The scrape of the shovel against rock, the wet thump of dirt, and over it my own voice whispering in perfect rhythm with each dig. Keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. I don't remember driving home. I only remember sitting on my couch hours later, shaking so hard I spilled my coffee. When I finally calmed down enough to breathe, I noticed something on my wrist and a smear of mud, streaked dark like old blood. I scrubbed it until my skin went raw. It didn't come off. That night I dreamed of the grave again. Except this time I wasn't standing beside it. I was in it, looking up, and above me someone, me, was holding a shovel, smiling down. When I woke, my throat hurt, like I'd been screaming, and there was dirt on my sheets. I called Karen. She didn't pick up, so I drove to the cemetery in daylight, hoping maybe the fog, the grave, the whole damn thing would look different in the sun. But Section G didn't have sunlight that day. It was darker than the rest of the grounds, shadows pooling unnaturally around the shed, the air still and cold, and right where I'd seen the grave, there was something new, a plaque. Bronze, it said, Thomas Reed, caretaker, served until October 7th, 2025. My breath caught. That was 2 days from now. I stumbled back, tripping over something in the grass. It was the notebook again, open to a page that hadn't been there before. October 6th, 2025, 12:57 a.m. The new one keeps running. They all do. He doesn't know tomorrow's his last shift. The ink shimmered faintly, like it was still drying. I tore the page out and crumpled it, but the words didn't fade, even balled up. I could feel them pressed into the paper, indented, permanent. That night I didn't even try to sleep. I sat up watching the window, waiting for something to happen. And right before dawn it did. A car pulled up outside my apartment, an old dented white pickup, the kind the cemetery used. The engine cut, and I heard the driver's door open. Then someone knocked once on my door, not loud, caught just 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't move. Then a voice through the wood. Shift starts in an hour. My voice. By the time I got the courage to look through the peephole, the hallway was empty, but on the floor outside the door sat something wrapped in brown paper. When I unwrapped it, my stomach dropped. A shovel, the same one. My initials carved into the handle and tied to it. With red twine, a small tag that said, "For tomorrow." I called the police. They said they'd send a car. No one came. I called Karen again, straight to voicemail. By 11 p.m. I was pacing, debating whether to leave town entirely. But when I looked out the window, the fog had already rolled in, now thick and heavy, like it was waiting for me. And somewhere in it, faint but steady, came the sound of digging. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Always 3 strikes, always rhythmic, and I knew that if I didn't go, he'd come for me instead. So I went. Back to Section G. The air was freezing. The fog so thick I couldn't see 5 feet ahead, but I could hear him, digging. When I finally found the shed, the grave was almost finished, and standing at the edge, shovel in hand, was me. But this time, his uniform wasn't mine. It was older, dirt-stained, torn at the sleeves, and he looked tired. So tired, like he'd been doing this forever. He didn't look surprised to see me, just nodded. "Slow you came." I swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" He glanced down at the grave. "Same as the rest, which is?" To stop. He turned the shovel handle toward me. "Finish it." I shook my head. "I'm not doing this." He smiled, a small, almost sad one. "You already have." I looked down. The grave wasn't empty anymore. There was a body in it. Mine, but not the version of me standing there. The version below looked newer, fresher, like it had just fallen asleep. The dirt around it pulsed slightly, like it was breathing. The sound of it, the soft shift of soil, was almost hypnotic. He leaned closer. "Once you see it, you can't leave. Not until it's covered." "I'm not burying myself," I whispered. He tilted his head. "You're not. You're burying me." Something cracked inside my head then, like the world split just a little, because I could feel it. That connection, that wrong, heavy pull between us. Every breath he took felt like it came from my lungs. Every blink of his eyes made mine twitch. And when I looked down again at the body in the grave, I could swear it twitched too. He held out the shovel again. "Go on," he said. "Just a few more scoops, then it'll be over." I don't remember making the first move, but the next thing I knew, I was holding the shovel. The dirt came up easily, damp, heavy, one scoop, then another, each time he stepped back, watching. Each time, the world felt quieter, smaller, until the sound of the shovel hitting the earth was the only thing that existed. Thunk, 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 and then it was done. The grave was full. When I looked up, the other me was gone. Only the fog remained, still, silent, unbothered. I dropped the shovel and stumbled away, half blind, half mad with exhaustion. By the time I reached the main gate, dawn was breaking. The fog started to thin, the world returning piece by piece, and for a moment, I thought maybe it really was over, until I looked down at my hands. They were covered in dirt. And when I turned them over, I saw something carved into my palm. Letters, fresh, raw, switch. I quit the next morning. Packed my things. Told myself I'd never go near that place again. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the sound again. The steady rhythm of metal hitting earth, and once, just once, I swear I heard my own voice whisper outside the window. Your turn. 2 weeks later, I saw the news. Westbrook Cemetery had a new caretaker. Young guy. Looked a little like me when I started. His name tag in the photo read Thomas Reed. I don't remember taking that picture. But I'm smiling in it, and behind me, barely visible in the fog, there's someone else holding a shovel. Smiling too. The radio was already hissing when I clocked in that night. A steady, low buzz that came and went like breathing. I almost didn't take the shift. It was supposed to be my last one. After 8 years of nights spent walking those same cracked paths and talking to no one but the wind. But Karen had begged me, just one more patrol, Eli, then you're done for good. So I said yes. And I wish I hadn't. The cemetery looked different that night. The fog was heavier, almost alive and moving like smoke. My flashlight kept catching tiny particles floating slow and thick. I knew every inch of that place, but the silence was off. No crickets, no rustle of wind, just that faint hum on the radio, like someone was whispering through static. Dispatch, I said into the mic, mostly just to hear a voice. No answer. Just a soft, drawn-out crackle like someone dragging a finger across the speaker. Then a faint voice, barely audible. Stay en route. Don't stop walking. It didn't sound like dispatch. I should have gone home right then. But I'd made a promise, one last patrol. So I started the loop, Section A, Section D, and then the back path past the bell tower, the oldest part of Westbrook Cemetery. The air grew colder the closer I got. My breath came out in sharp bursts, mist curling in the beam of my flashlight. That's when I noticed something strange. Fresh footprints in the gravel. Not mine. Too big, barefoot. They led toward the tower. I called out, "Hey, park's closed." No answer. The tower door was slightly open. Not enough to see inside, just enough to creak when the wind shifted. I pushed it gently. The hinges groaned. The smell hit first. Cold stone, mold, and something metallic underneath like old coins or dried blood. The light from my flashlight barely reached the stairs winding upward. Dust drifted in the air, and somewhere above me, a faint clink like chains, or maybe bells. I started climbing, one slow step at a time. Halfway up, my radio crackled again, faint laughter this time. My laughter, then a whisper, "You're early." I froze. "Who's on this channel?" Silence, then another whisper, this time closer. "We've been waiting." I looked up. The light hit something hanging near the top landing. A rope, frayed and swaying. The old bell chain, but it was moving on its own, ringing softly. Ding, ding, just enough to echo through the empty tower. When I reached the top, the bell loomed above me, huge, blackened with age, its rope swaying gently like a pendulum. Something glinted behind it. Metal? No. Eyes. There was someone there, a shape crouched behind the bell, half hidden in shadow. "Maintenance," I said weakly. "You're not supposed to." The shape stood, and the flashlight hit its face. It was wearing my uniform, and my name tag. I stumbled back so hard I nearly tripped on the stairs. It didn't move at first, just stared. Its eyes reflected light like an animal's, too bright, too wide. Then it smiled, and the bell rang once, loud enough to shake the floor. Dong. The sound tore through the tower, made my ears ring, my knees buckle. When it faded, The figure was gone. Only the rope swayed gently where it had been standing. I ran, all the way down the spiral staircase, nearly dropping the flashlight twice. Outside, the air was thick with fog again. Rolling in fast from every direction, the radio hissed in my hand. "Eli," it said. My name in my own voice. "You forgot the second loop." "I'm done," I whispered. "I'm done." But the voice kept talking. "You have to finish it. You always finish it." Then the bell rang again, once, twice, 13 times. I don't remember how I got to Section E, but that's where I ended up, standing among rows of headstones I'd walked past 100 times before. Except one was new. The ground still soft, flowers already wilting, and the stone read Eli Martin, 1987-2025, faithful watchman, never missed a night. I stepped closer. The dirt shifted slightly under my boots and I heard it. A voice below me. Mine. "Keep walking." The next few minutes are a blur. I think I screamed. Maybe I ran. All I remember clearly is the sound of my own footsteps echoing far too loud, like someone else was matching them step for step. When I finally stopped to catch my breath, I realized the sound hadn't stopped. There was someone walking beside me. I turned and saw myself. Again. Same uniform, same tired eyes, same dirt on the boots. He looked at me calmly and said, "You shouldn't have left the tower." "I'm not staying here," I said, backing away. He tilted his head. "You said that last time too." "What do you mean last time?" He pointed past me. I turned, and there in the fog were dozens of them, all wearing my face. All in the same uniform, some clean, some filthy, some so pale they barely looked alive. They stood between the graves, silent, waiting. The radio hissed again. Final patrol complete, then static, then, faintly, "Welcome back." I ran until the gates appeared in the fog. The padlock was still in place, but the metal was slick with frost. I rattled it uselessly before realizing the chain was already broken. I pushed through, stumbled out onto the road, and didn't stop running until the cemetery lights were gone behind me. I drove home shaking, the bell still ringing faintly in my ears. When I got to my apartment, I locked every door, closed every curtain. But sometime near dawn, the radio in my bag crackled again. "Eli," I didn't answer. "Your shift's not over." That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I haven't slept. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back on that path. Fog curling around my boots, the tower looming ahead. And last night, around 2 a.m., I heard the bell again. 13 rings, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then a knock at my door. 3 soft knocks. When I looked through the peephole, no one was there. But on the floor was my flashlight, still on, still flickering, and attached to it was a note, scrawled in my own handwriting, "Final patrol completed. Welcome to the night shift."